Hi, it's your boy, Alfonso Muchacho, and I'm here today to talk to you about sampling in the box. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, if you wanted to sample something, you had to buy a large, expensive box called a sampler. There are many famous ones, most notably the MPC. With modern DAWs, hardware samplers have sort of been replaced. There's still a market for them, as there will be with any sort of analog equipment, but software sampling is definitely easier and more convenient. Ableton Live is probably the best sampler ever made. Its ability to record, warp and mangle audio is, in my opinion, unrivaled. However, there are still standalone software samplers that are worth checking out. Even Live's inbuilt sampler is really very good. So I guess the question is, why would you need a dedicated software sampler when your DAW already plays back samples? The answer comes somewhere between feel and functionality. Playing a sample back from a dedicated sampler feels different. Hitting pads or keys to trigger a sound is a lot more fun than sequencing clips within your DAW. In addition to this, samplers have a lot of cool functions that can help you come up with creative uses for sampled sounds. Artists like The Prodigy, Burial, and so on, they pretty much every house artist pre the year 2000 have sampling to thank for their entire careers. So this is TAL Sampler. I won't go into all the functions, as I could probably dedicate an entire 30-minute video just to explaining the functionality within this plugin. All you need to know is you can load your own samples into it, and it essentially acts as a synth with the controls you'd expect from any soft synth on the market. You can see in the top right it has all the envelope controls you'd ever want. Below is a comprehensive LFO section. You've got a filter in the middle with effects all along the bottom. I've got the standard saw wave loaded. Let's take a listen to the filter and a few effects. So that sounds okay, but where it really starts to get fun is when you load in your own samples and play with the resampler effect. This is where you can dial in that grit and lo-fi dirt that you'd expect from an old 90s sampler. Let's take a listen. So we're getting lots of artifacts there, some hiss, lowering the bit rate crushes the sound up, wonderful stuff. There's a few different emulations in here, so it's worth experimenting until you find a sound that you like. Where samplers get really fun is when you sample chords. If you know even a little about music theory, you'll understand that pitching a chord up or down isn't the same as pitching a note. You'll get chords that aren't in key with your root note, and it gives this early 90s house vibe. Let's check that out. Even if you mimic that on a keyboard by playing the corresponding notes, it wouldn't sound the same. Pitching chords has this unmistakable raw quality to it. So TAL isn't the only sampler in town. The best known is probably Contact from Native Instruments, but don't overlook Live's own built-in sampler. It's got a surprising amount of features for a built-in instrument. Here I've spent a lot of time sampling my boutique JU06. I sampled individual notes and stored them as a complete instrument in Sampler. I think, however, I was wrong to do that. This kind of sampling should only be used for real instruments like a piano or something similar. I think sampling this way goes against the spirit of what sampling is all about. I should have just sampled middle C, for example, and then used Sampler to pitch the sound, instead of triggering a recording of that note. If you want that lo-fi sound, just sample one note. Take a listen to this sound I've sampled, and listen as I pitch it up and down. Its speed changes, giving it a different rhythm to the sample. The great thing about spending time sampling sounds is that you have them forever. A well-recorded sample, or even a poorly recorded one, can bring some human or analog imprecision to your in-the-box mix. I'd encourage you to sample as many different things as possible. Sounds around your house, poor quality YouTube recordings, or even the sound of a cork popping on a bottle of wine. And that gives me an idea. I hope you took some inspiration from this, and I hope it gets you off your chair and out recording some noises. I'll probably do a video on found sounds and samples from around the house, so make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Of course, if you don't want to stay in the box and you want to go out of the box, you probably want to have a look at buying one of these boxes. So Akai, as I said, have a gazillion different samplers, and some of their newer ones are absolutely fantastic. I think the MPC Live has had very good reviews. I've never actually used one myself. Some other alternatives, I think the Roland TR8S supposedly is a very good compromise between a drum machine and a sampler. What I probably would do if I was in the market for a new sampler is I would go for one of these old ones, one of the Akai S900s or something like that. You can get these on eBay for, well, it depends what condition they're in. A lot of them are very, very reasonable. One thing to check though when you're getting them is I would read a few reviews, because some of them can have issues like you need floppy disks for them to work, that kind of thing. So don't just blindly jump in and buy a sampler off eBay without researching it first. A lot of them are rack mounted. A lot of them have fantastic 12-bit low res grit that you just won't find anywhere else. But a lot of them are a pain in the backside to program. Hence why software samplers kind of rule the roost at the moment. But don't overlook the hardware element. I think you can get a lot of mileage out of some of these these old samplers, especially as you can have them for anywhere between £100 and £200, some of the really cheap, old, nasty ones. And let's be honest, if you're going for an external sampler, maybe, I mean, half the reason is to get something cheap, old and nasty, right? Anyway, something to consider.